Today is a Mailbag Wednesday, so we start with what I think was the most interesting and thought provoking question that we got this week, and that is who's the most important player against Alabama?
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On LSU. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Of course, we are part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. My name is Caroline Fenton, and I am your host, as I am every single day. Happy bye week. So we do a mailbag every Wednesday, but I'll be honest with everybody that I have been off my game throughout the season because throughout the season we have so much other content to get to of recap of the game before, preview of the game coming up, crossovers with the opponent's hosts. So I got a lot to do, a lot of content to put out there. So on me, admittedly, I have been ignoring your questions for far too long, but not anymore because this week's the bye week. So this is the week where we get everything straight. We get all the questions on the board. So let's get into that. But before we get into your questions, got to let y'all know that today's edition of Locked On LSU is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. So visit fanduel.com/locked on to get started. Let's start off with what made me think the most. And maybe this is silly. Like maybe I shouldn't have been stewing on this for as long as I was. But whenever I have a question like that makes me think, you know what? And I think and I think, and then I come back to it a couple days later and it continues to take up some mental space. I'm saying, okay, that's something that I have to address on the podcast. And this question is very straightforward and it should be simple. And it's who is the most important player against Alabama, which I interpret as who is going to be the most important figure in order to beat Alabama. Now, maybe there's one player that comes to your mind that seems obvious. To me, actually, the first thought that came to my mind was the defense. That the defense is going to be the most important because they're going to have to step up the most. That the defense is going to have to do more in that game than they have this entire season in order to win that game, because you win that game and you're probably going to Atlanta as long as you don't screw up at the end of the season against Texas A&M, which we know LSU has a tendency of doing, losing to Texas A&M when they shouldn't and beating Texas A&M when they shouldn't. It's a funny little rivalry that they got going on there. So my first thought was your defense is going to have to step up to beat Alabama. And no, Alabama's no elite defense. Alabama's offense doesn't hold anything to your offense. Alabama currently is the 71st ranked offense in all of college football. You're the first. So let's not get it twisted. It's not like this is a Washington offense that you're going up against this weekend. It's not like an LSU offense that you're going up against this weekend. But this is an offense that likes to air the ball out because LSU currently ranks 10th in explosive plays and Alabama ranks 11th. Because what Jalen Milroe struggles to do in the intermediate passing game, he makes up for in the massive long balls. I urge everyone who didn't watch the third Saturday in October to go back and watch the first Alabama possession, which was the first possession of the second half of that Tennessee-Alabama game. Because Jalen Milroe and that Alabama offense moved the ball 76 yards in 2 plays for a touchdown, less than a minute. And they completely turned around a very pedestrian first half offensively. So that's what I was initially thinking of is the defense got to be on their A game. This cornerback group that is, 1, decimated, and 2, wasn't really all that talented or deep to begin with, is going to be challenged with really good receivers. Jermaine Burton being at the top of that list. They're not your receivers. They're not Malik Neighbors. They're not Brian Thomas, but still, bear with me. They're good receivers with a quarterback that's incredibly accurate with passes 20 to 25 yards plus. So that's a tough test on the defense. So I thought, defense, step up. The defense is going to have to do more than they've done. But then I'm thinking, Caroline, Keep it simple, stupid. KISS. It's Jaden Daniels. Obviously, it's Jaden Daniels. And is it fair to put any more pressure on a player that's had the pressure of this entire team and this entire fan base on his shoulders all season long? Of course not. But he's a quarterback. That's the reality of it all. Get too much credit, get too much blame, and probably get too much pressure. Because whenever the defense fails to make a play, well, then it falls on the shoulders of Jaden Daniels to go out there and make a miraculous offensive play to make up for the shortcomings of the defense. We saw that so many times. Arkansas, every touchdown that the defense gave up, well, that just added even more to Jaden Daniels in the offense's plate. Ole Miss, Missouri, it's how you're able to stay in these games because your defense isn't going to get any better. As much as I want to think that, all of a sudden in 2 weeks, this defense is going to come out there and look better than they have all season long, they're not. That's the reality of it. They're not. They're not getting any better. It is what it is. There's nobody walking through that door. There's no Christian Fulton. There's no Derek Stingley. There's no Patrick Peterson. There's no Tyrann Mathieu that's walking through that door and making your defense better. The most important player on this team in this game is going to be the most important player that you've had all season long. The guy who's had to do the most all season long. The guy who's carried the biggest load for you all season long. It's Jaden Daniels. He's going to have to go out there and continue to be Superman. Is that a lot to ask of one player against one of the best defenses in the country on the road in a difficult place to play in Bryant-Denny? Absolutely it is. 100%. But that's the job he signed up for. It's Jaden Daniels against Alabama. It's Jaden Daniels against Florida. It's Jaden Daniels against Texas A&M. It's Jaden Daniels in the postseason. This team rides and dies by Jaden Daniels. If he has a game where he's off, maybe turns the football over, maybe doesn't hit receivers as seamlessly and as effortlessly as we've seen him do, then you don't beat Alabama. If the defense gives up 450 yards and 4 touchdowns, well, you know what? That's a whole lot more of what we've been seeing. You can't afford a game for Jaden Daniels to be off. Again, that's very much so not fair to him. But that is what it is. And that's how you win football games. So my answer to that question, who's the most important player, position group against Alabama? It's Jaden Daniels. It has been, and it will continue to be. More of your questions coming up next. There is a lot of scariness and a lot of uncertainty going on in the world right now. And I send my deepest love, condolences, and support to all of those peoples and families that are experiencing the unfortunate results and the unfortunate effects of some of the unrest that we're experiencing throughout the world, whether it be unrest in the Middle East, whether it be natural disasters. This world is a scary place. But you don't want to be left with the shortage of medications or maybe an inability to get the medications that you need to get. That's where the Jace case comes in. The Jace case is a personalized emergency medication kit that contains 5 essential antibiotics that treat the most common and deadly bacterial infections. You can also customize your case and add additional life-saving medications based on your unique needs. So don't be left wishing that you had some certain medications in your house in case of supply chain shortages, in case of unfortunate natural disasters that could strike your area. Be prepared for yourself and your loved ones. So Jace Medical now offers customizability for your Jace case with dozens of add-on medications. So choose the medications that fit you and your family's unique needs. Jace is continually working to expand their medication offerings. In those recent efforts, they added ivermectin as an option in the Jace case. So another area that you can also look at is you want to buy a gift card for your family or your loved one so that they can get a Jace case of your own, because we're getting into the holidays, we're getting into the season of giving, and there is no better gift than giving the gift of preparedness. And that is where Jace Medical comes in. So go to jacemedical.com and enter code LOCKED ON at checkout for $20 off. That's promo code locked on, LOCKEDON, at JaceMedical.com, JASE, for a $20 discount on your order. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's right. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. And if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, then there is no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads and player props and over-unders and so much more. You got the Bucks at the Bills coming up on Thursday Night Football. Personally, I'm taking the Bills with a bounce back win after that rough loss to the New England Patriots, but that's my take. Do it how you want to do it, and do it with FanDuel. Visit fanduel.com/locked on and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, well, thanks for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day. And hey, this season, Locked On is kicking up our coverage with Locked On College Football Kickoff Live. Every Friday, Locked On will go live at 11 a.m. Eastern on every Locked On College YouTube channel. College Football Kickoff Live will cover playoff implications, conference rivalry games, and go in depth like only Locked On can, including insight and analysis from our stable of Locked On College hosts covering their team every single day. So find Locked On College Football Kickoff Live every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern on any Locked On College YouTube channel. You will not want to miss it. Let's get back into it. Your questions on a Mailbag Wednesday. First question, most important player against Alabama. I don't know why I was overthinking it. It's Jaden Daniels. It's always going to be Jaden Daniels. Whatever the question is, the answer is Jaden Daniels. Who's the most important player? Jaden Daniels. Who's the best player in the country? Jaden Daniels. Who deserves the Heisman? Jaden Daniels. See what I'm getting at here? So that brings me to the next question that I wanted to touch on. And I understand that at this point in the season, it might feel doom and gloom. You might feel excited. You might feel a little bit in the middle. That's just kind of the reality of the place where this team is at. And I was actually on a call earlier with some Locked On friends. We were just discussing the latest across the Locked On network, and the Locked On Razorbacks host was like, I don't want to hear anyone who's upset about their team. We just lost to Mississippi State. We lost a game where we gave up one single touchdown, a game where we gave up 7 points and all we could muster up was 3. So I don't want to hear anyone complain. So think about what it could be, where life could be, and it might make you feel a little bit better. This question is, I'm getting concerned about LSU. If we can't win a national championship with Jaden Daniels in this offense, when are we ever going to win one? And I get it. I understand. Because that's the goal. That's the end goal, always. That's been the end goal. I mean, the last 3 head coaches at LSU have won national championships. That's not just the goal, actually. That's the expectation. That's why Brian Kelly was hired, was to bring a national championship to LSU, to bring LSU back to national championship contention. It's not just because him and Scott Woodward get along. It's not because he likes humidity. It's not because he's a big fan of gumbo. It's because he came to win a championship, and the expectations at this program are to win a championship. And I understand it. I've said it so many times. I've said it in this podcast. I've said it to friends. I'll say it again. That this LSU defense is wasting a national championship offense. Like, I can't help but think about if this team, this offense, had last year's defense, they'd be undefeated and a playoff contender. Maybe one of the favorites to win the championship. So I get it. It's frustrating. It's incredibly frustrating. But that's just kind of how it goes. And we didn't expect this defense to be great. I didn't expect it to be this bad, but we didn't expect it to be great. And yeah, it's unfortunate looking at what this offense is, understanding how many pieces of it will be moving on next year. You're not going to have Jaden Daniels next year. More than likely, you're not going to have Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas next year. It's a bummer. It stinks because it's like, okay, well, let's just start over again. Opportunity with a great offense wasted. Let's start over with Garrett Nussmeier. And this is no disrespect to Garrett Nussmeier, all of your young receivers that'll have a larger role next season. But it's like, well, dang, like we were so close. What could have been And I get it. It's hard to not let your mind wander to those places of what could have been. If this defense could just get a freaking stop against Ole Miss, what could have been if the offense looked how it looks now against Florida State? I know. I get it. I understand. You're gonna be back at this point. Because and I touched on this a couple podcasts ago, which of course you can find on your preferred podcast platform and on YouTube. But we were saying that after the 2019 season as well. Of how are we going to get back to where we were? Are we ever going to have a team that good again? And of course, that team was much more complete than the team that it is now, but it was carried by the offense. And as I laid out in that podcast, this offense is eerily similar to the one that you had in 2019. The 2019 offense was averaging 561 total yards a game. This team is averaging 556 total yards a game. This team runs the ball much more than they did in 2019. Joe Burrow had more passing touchdown than Jaden Daniels does. So you understand that. We all know that. We can see that. But if you're able to get an offense to the level of the 2019 offense, 5 years removed from that, you're going to be able to find that again. And I don't want to take this for granted at all because like we've seen, those don't come around very often. But I have enough faith in this coaching staff. I have enough faith in the talent in this state that they are actively recruiting and have recruited and players that have committed to LSU that you're going to get back to that place. Because you were nationally relevant in year 1. You're nationally relevant in year 2. No, you're not a playoff contender this season. But did you really think you were going to be? And if you did, then I don't know what to tell you. But the idea of we can't win a championship now, when are we ever going to? You're going to be able to get back to that place. You will. I don't know when it'll come. I don't know if it'll be next season. I don't know if it'll be the year after. But I also didn't know when you'd ever have an offense as good as you had in 2019. And you have that this year. More questions coming up next. Passion, drive, and patience. That is what brings home the winning trophy, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed or power or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts that you need at the prices that you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, let's get back into your questions since it is a Mailbag Wednesday after all. And I love this point in the season. I think this next question kind of illustrates the sentiment that I'm about to express. Is at this point in the season, you have enough of a sample size to have a fair evaluation of your football team, but there's still enough football left to be played that can completely change your perspective and your mindset on the season. I'll use last season as an example. You open up the season with the most atrocious display of discipline and special teams that I maybe have ever seen against Florida State. You get boat raced at home to Tennessee. And then you beat Ole Miss. And then you beat Florida. And then you beat Alabama. And then you beat an ugly game. You win an ugly game at Arkansas. Then all of a sudden, you win the SEC West, and your perspective of the season is much different, right? So I don't know what's going to happen in the next month. Maybe LSU beats Alabama and gets back to Atlanta. Well, that makes you feel a whole lot different about the season. Maybe LSU just lays an egg against Alabama and loses out the rest of the season. Boy, oh boy, I'd throw a freaking gasket if that happened. I don't expect that to happen, but also, I don't know. We feel like we have everything figured out in late October, when in reality, the toughest test of your schedule has yet to come. So this question is, and this is a group of questions, which I've collected a few to get the overall like vibe and sentiment of the fan base. And we've got a couple questions of, when is it time to move on from Brian Kelly? And we've got a couple questions of, should LSU extend Brian Kelly? So wow, that's two very different ends of the spectrum here. And I think both of those questions could be warranted. I still think both of you are crazy for wanting to fire the coach or wanting to extend the coach in year 2 of a 10-year deal. You guys are both absolutely bonkers. And I'll explain why. You're not extending a coach in year 2 in a 10-year deal when he's won the SEC West, but also you still have some questions about this roster. You still have some questions about Brian Kelly's ability to win the big one. You haven't really, you won the SEC West. That's all you've done. You won the Citrus Bowl. That's what has Brian Kelly done to warrant an extension in year 2? No, that's silly. And fire him? Really? That's silly too. Because what's not enough for you? Taking over a roster that had 38 scholarship players and turning it around to beat Alabama and win the SEC West in his first season? And then in year 2, has the best offense in college football? Now, look, Brian Kelly has done some things that I do not agree with. Not firing Matt House yet. Don't agree with that. Putting Harold Perkins in at inside linebacker. Coaching malpractice. And nitpicky things like going for 2 against Texas A&M last year when you're down like 3 scores. Why are we doing that? Didn't make any sense. It's done some things that I don't agree with, but nothing that warrants firing. And anyone that wants to bring up moving on from the coaching staff, which I think is just ridiculous. My question to you is, what coach in the SEC would you rather have over Brian Kelly? Nick Saban? Fair. Totally fair. You're not getting Nick Saban. You're not going to hire Nick Saban. The only other coaches that I can think of would be maybe Josh Heupel. Great season last year. They went 10-2 with losses to Georgia and South Carolina. Went to the Orange Bowl in year 2. Yeah, sure. Okay, fine. Josh Heupel's teams can't win on the road. In the last 2 seasons, the only games that they've won on the road were at LSU, which, we're all very aware of, and Vanderbilt. They gave up 60-something points against South Carolina on the road. Didn't even make it competitive against Georgia on the road last year. Got embarrassed in the swamp, and then gave up 27 unanswered points in the second half against Alabama and Bryant-Denny. I don't really know if that's a product that I would rather have over what Brian Kelly is. You want Jimbo Fisher? I'm good. You want Billy Napier? I'm good. Hugh Freeze is a good coach, but Auburn is the 101st ranked offense in the country right now. I don't think I'd rather have Hugh Freeze over Brian Kelly. So who do you want? Lincoln Riley? I'm good. Jim Harbaugh? Yeah, no. I'm good. I'm good on that. Mike Norvell? Maybe. I mean, but like, let's be real, people. What Brian Kelly has done is really impressive. And what Mike Norvell is doing at Florida State took him a lot longer than what Brian Kelly did at LSU. Like, we were talking about potentially firing Mike Norvell at the beginning of last year because he had either 2 or 3 seasons of lackluster football. I understand your frustrations. I understand that this defense makes you just want to put your fist through a wall sometimes. But overall, I think this program's in good shape. Now, look, I reserve the right to change my mind at any point. I'd like the defensive coordinator to be gone. But overall, firing the coach, come on. What, you want Ed Orgeron back? I'm good. I'm good. Extending the coach. Come on. Come on. Raise the standards a little bit. Come on. National title. Then we can talk about an extension. All right, that's going to do it for me today. Thank you for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Coming up on tomorrow's edition of Locked On LSU, I'm going to do a little coordinator report card breakdown of Matt House, Mike Denbrock, John Jancik's work with the special teams, plus a full recruiting breakdown because LSU just landed two incredibly important recruits in the 2025 classes. So we'll talk with Brian Smith, Locked On's official recruiting insider, on tomorrow's editions of Locked On LSU.